Boom. All right, we're going.
Okay, well, that's some fun.
Yes, let's do it. God, I'm trying to. Any topics that you are itching to talk about, or you want me?
We were talking about relationships and stuff yesterday, weren't we? And I think we can talk about, I mean, that drifts into a bit of culture as well, doesn't it? So kind of building relationships and the positive side of things of like maybe kind of where I come through and what I learned in my time, in an industry as kind of weird as the music industry, where you're dealing with all different types of characters.
Yeah, I think absolutely that's a good way to go, because the quality of, I think, my opinion, the quality of your relationships will determine the trajectory of your success. Like if you're really good at doing relationships and they're really solid, I think it opens up a lot more opportunities if you don't take that seriously.
Yeah. And I think the thing is that, I mean, you want to kind of ask me something and then we'll have something that will be usable, hopefully.
Shit, I'm probably going to leave this in there.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, because it's just our private conversation that we're sharing with other people. So I don't mind. I don't have to contrive a question for you. I say we just talk about relationships and how important those are.
Well, should I just kind of roll with it and see?
Yeah, I mean, because
I'd
say talk about it from two perspectives: the relationships that you built as a promoter, that really greased the way for you to be able to be a successful promoter for bands, but also the relationships within a company like Island Record, also looking at the relationships between a band, also between a band and their fans, because there's all these different angles of relationships that I think you could take a deep dive into.
Yeah, I think it's we've had these conversations over the years, but I think the older I get, the kind of wiser I become at looking back at the things that worked for me. And having a job that was an extension of my hobby was not really something that I ever thought, dreamed about at school. But then all of a sudden you're kind of thrown in, if you like, in the nicest possible way. I mean, because it was the job that I never expected, that I would never let go. And when I got in there, I think I was driven. It was like an adrenaline rush that never died. It was kind of like the opportunity to, mingling is one word, but kind of, I don't think you can work on building relationships. I think you just have to kind of accept that you chose this and you get on with it type thing, because you meet all different types of characters. And I've always said that there's people that you want to work with and people you have to work with. And like a lot of industries where a lot of wealth can be generated from certain people who have ulterior agendas, shall we say, me not being one, of course, I thrived on the fact that you never really knew who you were going to meet. I mean, I always used to say to myself that I got something for everybody I met. It might not be something that I'd kind of follow, but it might stop me doing certain things down the line in a different way. So I remember when that guy back in the day did this and I wasn't happy with that. And then I saw something on the horizon that might have gone the same way. For me personally, I felt that it was a great opportunity to grow myself as well, because I was still like pretty young. I was 20 when I entered the business. So I was talking to people who had the same interests in me. So I always find with music, there's a lowest common denominator. I don't care what kind of music you like, as long as you like something.
Right.
In culture, that's the kind of thing that brings people together. It can get very nerdy, because back in the day, you did have endless nights of sitting into the early hours, listening to album after album. In the days when you have to get up and turn it over, nobody had heard it. Nobody invented remotes. My God, I'd kill them when I find them.
That's funny.
But I just, I still enjoy it now, because I think certainly coming to another country, you embrace a different culture as well. And yeah, I mean, I said this along the way, you kiss a few frogs along the way, but that kind of helps shape who you are, and you stick to the things that kind of got you through, if you like. I suppose that's a bit of an understatement, saying got you through, the things that kind of helped shape who you became. And I remember when I got my first job, I mean, I don't see the point. I mean, I'm talking to you about it in the context of what we're talking about now, but I I wrote about it in my book, and I said, you know, I went to further education college after school, which was perfect for people like me who were done with school but not quite ready for work. Didn't mean that I wasn't ambitious. It just meant that I had no clue what I wanted to do. And then I had all these wild dreams of maybe I'll be a solicitor, lawyer stroke thing, you know, and then so I went to do a course in business studies. Well, let's just say the college was 70% girls and 30% boys. So business studies wasn't really on my curriculum.
Oh, no.
I became social secretary and was booking the band, so it wasn't hard to get a date. But seriously, though, it was kind of like it was really good, because the thing for me was I landed a job, and it was just a job as a clerk. It was first base, so to speak, and nothing inspired me. The great thing about it was that from the moment I walked in there, I was waiting to find an opportunity to leave, but I had to bring home some money because I needed some money to buy records and go to gigs. And the office manager used to come in, and he used to come in and sit behind his Alcyon Towers with his window, and you know, no interaction with the staff or anything. Not a kind of hello, how you doing, guys? Good to see you. You know, let's go for it, kid. Nothing motivational, nothing like that. So there was nothing that inspired me. In as much as I think when you take on any job, you actually want to move through the ranks and maybe be that person, not exactly be him, but get in that role of you know, being in a position that you can see that you've succeeded in the role that you're at. But with me, when I went in there was nothing that kind of inspired me. The guy that I sat next to, from the moment he got in, he started talking about he couldn't wait till Friday when he could go to the pub. I thought, oh my God, you know, 5 days of this. So when I did get that opportunity, and I managed to get my little job selling records, oh my God, was I fired up, because this was something where I could, you know, I could talk to the same like-minded people. We could talk music, and you know, at the same time, I was learning my trade, and I found that incredibly useful with bands like U2, because I was in my infancy in promotion, and they were in their infancy of being in a band. Although I was probably better at communications than they were at playing back then.
Right.
But it was a seriously good learning curve, because when you watch a band grow through the ranks, so to speak, you kind of can't help but notice it. And you know, those moments, my moments that rock in those early days were, you know, when you see him play to an audience of 11 people and put such a powerful performance in it. We've spoken over the years many times about that. And then that 11 people becomes 25, becomes 75, becomes 200. And like now you're talking of tens of thousands, you know, they can fill a stadium of 100,000 people. But they still have that, you know, that kind of wanting to draw the crowd in and retain that little bit of intimacy in a vast arena. And I think the best artists are the one that can relate to an audience in that way. Because, you know, I always say that there's a lot to be said for an artist who can look like they're enjoying themselves.
Do me a favor. Can you retell the story about when you got U2 into their first like network? I think it was network radio. You told them something along the lines, and I'll just start it for you so you can finish it, is that I can get you in here because of who I know.
Yeah, well, it wasn't their first network. It was their first regional radio interview. It was in Glasgow at a radio station called Radio Clyde. There were like 5 big stations, because unlike America, where you have like, you know, it's all regional. In the UK, we have one national. We have the BBC, which has like national stations. So, you know, depending what type of music it is, you can go on one of those BBC, which is like everybody is everywhere all over the country. In England, we had commercial radio as well, which wasn't like college radio, because it wasn't playing hip hop and coming bands. And I took him to do an interview with a guy who did the kind of late night show once a week, 11 till 2 in the morning. But the people who listened to that show were music lovers. So in the daytime, they play like, you know, recognizable bands and stuff, because a lot of people are vacuuming, doing the washing, taking the kids to school. The radio's just on. And it's kind of, for want of a better word, I think they used to call it entertainment, but wasn't. I was working in that area, but the specialist shows were where you really saw building a fan base for an artist. So I took him to this station. We'd been driving like 3 hours in the rain or something. Two excitable kids in the back were just chit-chatting along the way. And then we're there. We park outside and turn the windscreen wipers off. And I look back on it now as kind of like a moment that rocked for me as well. Because I kind of just leant round and there's like sat on the edge of the seats like excitable kids, you know. Because apart from one thing, they were only like 3 months into a record contract, if that. So, you know, everything was like, wow, how did we get here? When they haven't got anywhere, really. They just started. So I leant behind like this and I just looked at these two kids in the back, which was Bono and The Edge, like, you know, who nobody knew then. I remember when I took him in and the guy knew his name, but it'd be funny if you said, oh, David, this is Bono and this is The Edge. And you'd think like, what? What's your proper name? None of that happened anyway. So I just said to them, I said, listen, guys. And I was kind of just looking at them, you know, purposefully. And I said, listen, guys, I can get you in here because of who I know. Only you can get yourself back in here because of who you are. Which, looking back on it, is quite prophetic, you know, because I'm thinking like, it's so true because my relationships with the media, with the guy who was doing the show, I would take artists in all the time and a lot bigger bands than U2. But then they'd go back to London or wherever, or if they were out of the country, they'd travel back and things. And then I'd go out for a curry with the guy and we'd hang out and we'd be friends, you know. So that was the bit about I can get you in here because of who I know, i.e. the relationship. And the who you are bit was basically saying to me, no uncertain day and no uncertain ways, this is your opportunity. Because I have the relationship to phone up and say, I can get you in here, over to you.
Yeah, I love that part of the story, but it also reminds me of another piece of this story that you've told me over the years is where when they first got their record deal with the major label of Island Records, which was a huge label in the UK that's, you know, put out tons of amazing acts, that the owner of Island, Chris Blackwell, when U2 was getting signed, was like, I don't really get it. They're a little trebly, but the relationship aspect that I want to touch on here is that Blackwell had a relationship with the people that he hired to be in his company, so much so that he trusted their opinions. And Bono, even though they weren't at the peak of their skill, like his voice still cracked and the Edge, you know, some of the guitarists still weren't really at the peak of their experience. They still got signed anyway because of who they were, because of their Bono's charisma, the band's enthusiasm, and the nature of who they were. I think that's an important thing to touch on.
I think if you look at it generally, I think, you know, when it comes to an artist, the best artists are the complete package, you know. And we just recently lost somebody like Tina Turner, you know, who was like beyond amazing. I mean, even from the struggle she overcame to come back and be bigger than she ever was when she could have been that woman that was beaten down, you know. And then you look at Springsteen, and then you look at U2, and you look at these charismatic entertainers that are the complete package. And I think that's a secret ingredient, in as much as they have a hunger for success, but not necessarily to be rich. Bowie was obviously another one, you know. He saw music as a route, an in route to kind of broaden all his interests, and the entry route was being a musician. And I think the thing is, with when you get some hungry kids, I mean, let's face it, anybody who's in a band wants attention. You know, you're washing your dirty laundry in public, so you're going to get like knockbacks and this and that, but you have to be able to overcome all those things. You have to be prepared to come off stage and know that you played crap, because the next day you've got to get up and do it all over again, and, you know, make sure that you build a solid fan base.
Yeah, another aspect here that I want to touch on is the relationship between the artists and their fan base. And this would be applicable to businesses selling products or services. When you as the performer or as the business owner care a lot about what you're delivering to the audience, because these performers are great because they really care about delivering an experience to the crowd. If they did not have that excitability, that passion, that charisma to deliver at that level to people, because what's the point of a band? To make people feel really good, entertain them, and just have a wonderful experience in all the ways possible. When you do that as a business owner, things can change for you. And so it is. So.
Well, going back to actually not drifting away from your question, when you said like, you know, Island Records and U2 and stuff, it goes exactly back to that thing that I said. I suppose subliminally it sunk into me, knowing the kind of label Island was, when I was saying to them, you know, only you can get yourself back in here because of who you are. I mean, that was kind of the Chris Blackwell carrot in a way, wasn't it? In as much as we're signing you because of who you are, not because you're the greatest guitar player or the greatest singer. There's something there. And what I really respect in a leader, as Blackwell was, is the fact that you surround yourself with skillful people, and you're not trying to employ people who might be better in a particular area than you are. You can sit there as like the flagship, if you like. Branson knows very little about music, yet he employed a guy when he started Virgin Records who was an A&R person. I mean, who would sign Mike Oldfield and make a record like that? But the thing with Blackwell was that he didn't interfere. Any boss who owns the company can turn in and say, no, we're not spending money on that. I don't like him. You can't argue with it because he owns the company, but he left them to it.
What this also reminds me of is there's this saying, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah. Because I think that's when complacency sets in. And I always thought that, you know, me, myself, I suppose that sunk into me with people that were around me in a way that once you think you've done it and you've got there, you don't really have to try that hard. You do, because there's always people coming up behind you in whatever area you work in who will take your mantle, your throne, so to speak. And I think the thing is that those are the things that drive you forward. And I was inspired by a lot of the people around me who were good at what they did. And it made me want to, you know, in a competitive way, be good at what I did. Because I could share that when I started my own promotion company, of like letting people know that I find at a grassroots level, nobody comes in and has a divine right to be successful at a particular role that they play. They have to make it their own. Yeah,
I think the reason why relationships is such an important topic is because, okay, let's couch it in the scene of a band. You cannot be the drummer, the guitarist, the lead singer, the roadie, the promotion machine. You must have good relationships with a number of people, right? Even if you're a solopreneur or whatever, you're still going to have vendors that do things for you. You can't imagine hitting the level of success that you want to be as just an individual. If you're not good at marketing, if you're not the social animal, you need somebody that has those relationships, that has that innate skill, and assemble that team of amazing people, and that will get you where you want to go. If you try to do it all yourself, you're trying to be the entire band, you're going to suck.
But it also allows you to even get better at your skill set. So that if you're a good like A&R person, the person who signs the artist, but once you signing them is one thing. Once you've signed them, you have to get on with making them successful. So each department within the infrastructure of a record company has to have relationships with each other, because you need your promotion guy, you need your PR person, your publicist doing press and stuff. You need people who have the ability to put it into record stores so that people have the opportunity to buy it if they hear it on the radio. So there are relationships going on all around. The thing that impressed me with U2 was, and that impressed me at a completely different level, with a seriously successful manager who'd come from entertainment, working in variety with the likes of Robert Redford and Steve McQueen and all that in the 50s, a guy called Michael Lippman, who I remember reading an article about him, and it really, you know, I was staying with a friend in Hollywood at the time, and I saw an advert for this band Matchbox 20, and he knew the manager, so I kind of reached out to him blindly, cold called him, and he liked the fact that I'd done that, you know, because he saw something in me as well. And I think the thing was that he wanted to know every part of the business. So even though this guy had been the president of a record label, was a fully qualified lawyer, was a manager, and even managed producers, he wanted to know every part of the machine, what happened, would always ask questions and stuff. And I think that's what made him a great manager, you know, because he knew what people's jobs were, and he would always ask questions and things. And I found myself absorbed in that, because all the time he wanted the answers, I was getting better and better at what I was doing, because I was there to deliver, you know, answers to his questions.
I think you said something right there that's very important to cue in on. I wanted to deliver. So I think people that do relationships really well, because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of takers in the world, right? But if your primary focus is on delivering and not about what you're receiving, if you have, I'm just going to deliver the best I possibly can, you're eventually going to stumble into people that give back, right? So it's not about, I'm going to deliver only to the point where I think I should be able to get something back. I think you need to kind of drop that expectations and just always be delivering, and you'll get around the right people as a result of that.
Yeah, you know, one thing we haven't mentioned, Sean, is if you find something that you love, it's important to have fun doing it as well, because I think people connect with people on a human level as well. If you're smiling and, you know, you're engaging and they want to be around you and stuff, I think those things are really important, because you kind of grow up and you have a friendship. I always used to like the fact, I mean, I know some people like to separate themselves from being the boss to being the staff type thing, but I used to hang out with the crowd, the people that were working with me. I like to think I could employ somebody that I'd quite happily have a beer with, you know. It doesn't, you don't lose that mutual respect for one another. It wasn't like they had to, you know, be, not subservient, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not like they were answerable to me. I mean, we wanted to create a relationship, and I wanted my company to grow with the people around me, you know. And I've always said that I don't think anything that I've achieved in my 30-year career has ever been down to me. It's always been down to a team of people. And I think inherently that was born into me working for a label like Islands. I don't want to be dismissive of larger labels, but it was a small enough label. I mean, I do my own podcast now, as you know. I'm reaching out to a lot of those people I worked with 30 years ago. They're replying to me. They can't wait to jump on. And I can't wait to hear the stories that have happened from that time to where they're up to now and things. And you just think, these are people that are out of your life, but they're not. And I like to think that they get an email from me and they smile, because I get answers straight away. Hey, Tone, how you doing, mate? You know, and all that. And I've said this a million times, and it's not like the boring old man talk. It's like, it's so like incredible to think that proper relationships never die. You know, people grow up, they have kids, they move to different places. I'm one of those people, you know. So when I go back to England, it's funny, because I will contact the people I want to contact, but I will never put it on Facebook, because I'll have people that I don't need to see. They'll say, "Oh, we'll have to get together," you know, and all of a sudden I've got an itinerary. And so you become like, but there are certain people, certainly since I've done my podcast, that I've had the opportunity because of this to reach out, and I'm helping promote them in what they're doing, because, you know, there's a large audience there. And it's as entertaining as anything I've ever done, because I mean, podcasts didn't exist back in the day. So, and people naturally drift apart, but there's so many people that I've just got on Zoom with and interviewed. And it's like I was in the pub with them last night. You know, and I'm thinking, oh my, and this guy that I told you this story of, you know, before we started this. And, you know, we always talk about that, because I know what it meant to you and how it resonated, that 11 people at the U2 gig. And I'm talking to the guy 2 weeks ago who put that gig on before they had a record contract. So it's kind of, I've gone full circle. And we're the same age, you know, and he's just telling me things that I didn't even know, and I was working with him.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. You know, I guess I could wrap it up in, I can also relate to that thing about being distant for a period of time with people and then coming back and picking up, like it was like yesterday that you hung out together. I had an experience with my a boss I had in the military that I hadn't seen for over a decade. He came by, stayed at my house for about a week or two, and it was like we had never stopped talking.
Yeah.
It was that connection. And one other thing too that I really want to hit on here is you should make having fun a serious business. You should be serious about having fun because it's infectious, it's magnetic, and life's going to give you a bunch of crap anyway. Like that's just going to happen. Things are going to go sideways in life. So in the middle, have more fun.
But you know what else, Sean? I think you're absolutely right. But one word that just came out immediately then was hunger. It's a hunger for people. It's a hunger for relationships. It's a hunger to continue what you once achieved, that you still feel that you're an achiever because it's just a different area that you move it into. I don't want to do what I did, but I want to do where I'm going and what I'm doing with the people I want to be with, doing the things I want to do and delivering the results that I know I can give.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. Yeah, I think that was great. I think we hit that topic.
Pretty good.
I think we hit the topic pretty well. I mean, what else about relationships would you want to?
I felt. Let me just go and have a quick swig. Don't phone me back. We'll stay online if it's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
It'll literally be 2 secs.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, Sean, what that felt like to me was I felt more animated. I felt like I was, more gestures and things.
You did more gestures, but you also did a whole lot more smiling.
Yeah.
That alone makes other people smile, right? It's that, like they're gonna eventually, if you're being watched, they're gonna start mirroring, right? If you're too serious, then they're gonna feel serious. If you're having fun, it's kind of like, have you ever heard somebody laughing and you don't even know what they're laughing about, but then other people start laughing too just because that person's laughing so much?
We could put some humor into this because I had an idea that I've never really done, but it was going to be, on that day of like, we live in that age of short reels and things.
We can do something like that book in the background. You can change that out about like, having the tantric sex, how to bone in 500 different ways book. Have that. No, but I know what you mean. Just natural humor.
Well, I had this idea of doing it. I was just going to do this little voiceover. Go, you did what? And it's like stories about running out of gas with Peter Gabriel. I think I can incorporate those into what we're doing, because that's the human element of the fact that, what do you say to Sting when you can't find the car that you're picking him up on a very short schedule?
That ties into relationships, in when you are at ease and comfort and having fun and you can joke about dumb shit and other people respond. That's relationship.
I won't share this story, but a guy that worked for me, he went out on a promo tour with, I can't remember the artist it was, but she had a single in the charts. She was sat in the back of the car and he was driving and he missed his turn off the motorway and he started flapping, and it was like, shit, I should have turned off there, and she sat in the back, with a guy she's never met, to the extent that when she got back, she said to the manager, I was a bit nervous with it. And he reported it to the head of promotion. So it came back to me. So I had to bring him in and say, hey, just tell him this because they've told me it's no big deal. But, when you're out with an artist, and he was panicking, well, you think you've got a stranger in the back who's going to radio stations and he's nervous because she's going to be in the car another 40 minutes with you and you miss your turn off and you're kind of gesticulating a bit. So kind of that was like, the reason I'm saying that is the ability to, I think that's another good topic in as much as the ability to deal with I don't know, are we recording?
For me, that speaks to confidence in yourself to manage your emotions and having that emotional intelligence. So knowing that you can fucking you need to have confidence in yourself to the level that even if things go fucked up, and they will sometimes, 100% guaranteed, some shit is gonna fucking happen. You lost your car when you're with Sting, but if you can joke and play and be resilient and have confidence in yourself and know that you have an ability to make people laugh, to put them at ease, that's a good fucking skill. It's a real good skill, and you should develop it.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because a few years ago, and this is a global brand in as much as it goes every not every city, but, you know, all over the world type thing. They have this thing called fuck up nights. And I got approached to do it. And when the girl approached me, I went and met her for lunch. I said, "You have found your prize catch." You know, fuck up nights. I'm an expert. And it was an opportunity to share ridiculous stories with famous people about events that happened that you didn't freak out and panic about. You fucked up. And I think it makes you a human, but it also makes the relationship with the star that you're with a human too. Because they're not going to go back and say, "Why'd you send me out with that asshole?" You know, they just laugh. You know, I mean, when I ran out of gas on the motorway with Peter Gabriel, I mean, who goes out on a promo tour without checking their fuel? Me.
That's great. Well, it's kind of about like not taking anything too fucking serious, because there's enough serious shit in the world to fuck yourself up with.
But panicking's not going to change it, because I ran out of gas. It wasn't going to get full until the AA came out with a gallon of gas and put it in my car so I could drive to the nearest station. It's there. It's happened. Deal with it.
Yep. And it is
that there are extreme highs and kind of semi-ridiculous lows. I mean, but in a way, those are some of the things that some people would give people a warning and sack them off the back of it. I mean, 3 strikes and you're out type thing. I don't always agree with that. I mean, you know, 3 footballs can help shape you. We'll have a new topic.
Oh, yeah. Not taking yourself seriously is a really good skill to have.
It makes you human. And I think the thing is, and we've been there before, I think, but when you look at artists of the pedigree of particularly Adele and Ed Sheeran, the word normal doesn't mean boring. It just means that, you know, there's somebody that you can relate to. And I think it's very inspirational, in as much as that person who's looking at that person who's hugely successful thinks, maybe that could be me one day. Not necessarily as a singer or something like that, but see somebody at the pinnacle of success who hasn't really changed from the person that started off from day one.
Well, it makes it easier for them, because then they're just being consistently authentic. Then they don't have to remember who this
exactly.
They don't have to remember who this bullshit character that they're playing. They don't have to, because they're always just. And I think that's also speaks to another issue about, you know, bringing out your freak flag. There are elements of you, not different from you, not contrived, but to bring out the best, to bring out your unique qualities that make you, and just be that. So you never, like I said, you don't have to remember this fake character that you're playing. It's just entirely more of who you are and that authenticity that people resonate with.
But I think it's important to leave your mark. I don't think you do it in a calculated way. But yeah, I mean, people might remember who I am because I got a long surname, but I don't want to be remembered for having a long surname. I want to feel that, you know, like if you've got an artist coming out on the road with you and they have a good time and get the job done at the same time, then they will naturally go back and thank the people that arranged it for them, the record company, the manager, and things like that. So there's a general feel-good factor where that artist has been working hard but enjoying themselves at the same time, which will give them the enthusiasm to continue to do more. And I think those type of things, you know, translate with other people as well, because I think if you've got a good team of people around, I mean, I could send anybody we were working out on the road with one of 3 different people in my office, and they'd all have a good time and enjoy. And it ends up in the evening where you chill out and you talk over. I mean, I remember when I was working with Steve Winwood, you know, I grew up buying his records in the 60s, you know, Traffic. And then I'm working with him in the 70s and being able to go out and have a curry with him. And I asked him, like, I very vividly, the sleeve was in front of me. of traffic, like, you know, sitting around this fire with their eyes like this. And I took a sip on beer, and my beer, looked across at him and I said, what were you taking in the 60s? And he just said, oh, we just smoked a lot of a lot of dope, you know. And it was hilarious. But who gets the opportunity to, I mean, even when I interviewed him, I mean, there's some great stories there, but here's a guy who Richard Branson signed when he was about to start the airline, and he needed, like, you know, to raise money. So he'd had a #1 album in America. So Branson went after him, and Winwood was at a period where, you know, not a falling out with Alan, but got offered a huge amount of money in advance. So he moved to Virgin, and he was releasing his first record, and it was called Roll With It. And I remember the album sleeve cost like 70 grand, because I interviewed the managing director the other week of the record label for my podcast, and he told me that at the time. And it was a ridiculous amount of money. He had this white silk shirt on, and it was obviously the marketing side of things with the record company tried to make him like the cute guy that the girls would buy the record from, you know. So it was a package. Where this was a guy who was just like a great piano player, brilliant guitarist, amazing singer, classic, all full-on artist. God, he was 14 when he joined the Spencer Davis band. It wasn't like he wasn't an unsung hero. He'd been around a while. And I got this list of questions that Virgin had sent me, and it was from all the other territories, because he'd agreed to do, after I'd worked with him and he signed to Virgin, obviously I was no longer promoting him, but he would only do one interview with MTV Europe. And it was one of those things where the camera was behind me, I was off camera, and Winwood was there. And I hadn't seen him for like 4 years or something. But we had a good time when we were working together. Like I said, I asked him that question about what he was smoking in the 60s. And then so like I get all these questions, and they give me a first class ticket. I'm down the train. It's a 2.5, 3 hour train journey. I'm looking at these questions, and here's a guy who's signed to a new label who wants to promote his latest product, right? So, so I'm looking at these questions, and one of them was Virgin Germany. Were the swinging 60s as swinging as they were made out to be? And another one was like, what is your favorite Traffic song? And I'm thinking, what the fuck? You know, this is like a guy who's wanting to promote his next phase of his career. So being the idiot that I am, I'm sitting there writing my own questions. So I get off the train. I was collected by a car to go to it was in Kensington, which was where Princess Diana lived and all that, you know, very posh part of London, in the Halcyon Hotel. And all the Virgin Glitterati were out, and they were in this room, and they got all the sandwiches in and the wine and this, and, you know, the director of sales and the head of press and the managing director and stuff. And the girl came to pick me up in the lobby, and she comes down to get me, and we get in the elevator and we go up, and I walk in the room, and Steve's over there. And the first thing I see is these people. I look across and I see Steve Winwood, and he's got this white satin shirt on. So I just look at him, and the first thing I say is like, have you not got another fucking shirt? and the Virgin people, Sean, are going like, oh my God, you know. So he's like laughing, you know. So we get mic'd up, I sit down at the table, and I remember the questions that were in my head, you know. I had my own questions that I was asking. This was a radio interview before I did the MTV thing. And I'm sitting there dead seriously. And in those days, you had a portable reel-to-reel recorder. So I brought that with me, plonked it down, got the mic. And my first question was, Steve, as an artist, would you rather be played at 33 1/3 or 45? So he's looking at me and he goes like, I thought it might be like this. I mean, the sum total of it was like, you know, we went out after the interview and had a curry again and stuff. But the funny thing was, I went to see him. They did 3 nights at the Royal Albert Hall as part of the big promotion. And Eric Clapton was playing with him. And his new manager was an American lady that he'd married, you know. So I got like, he'd left me I went to the gig. Like I say, you know, Virgin gave me some tickets, but I also got like a pass to go backstage. So I just went to say hi. I didn't want to interfere with things because it was a big night when all the Glitterati were there and all the media people and stuff. And my introduction to Steve Winwood was, he came over and gave me a little hug and says to his wife, he says, there's that guy from Manchester I was telling you about.
Oh, no.
So about, you can leave an impression in lots of different ways. But I left an impression as a human, not as like a record company executive or anything like that by just being normal.
I think that's a big deal. I also think that really to bring the best out in people, like you need to find what one word describes it is. What's your shtick? Are you the humor guy? I mean, like everybody has their own thing to bring out that's just so natural for you because you're a funny guy, right? And that probably helped in building your relationships. But being known for something, right? Being known for something, like I'll give you an example. Like I could put the Doors on in like 2 seconds. I will know that's the Doors because they developed a very unique sound that they seem to enjoy doing. Same thing with Hendrix, but also with like comedians, right? Like I know Will Ferrell's got his thing. He's got a very specific type of humor. So find out whatever your deal is, be known for it, embrace it. If it's humor, that's great. If it's something else, that's great. But it's like that's a part of relationships. You know, who are you?
I think with something as kind of unique, for want of a better word, as the music industry, you've got to remember that you mentioned two people there like Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix who were incredibly talented, but not to the extent of being able to save their lives, so to speak, you know, because you're going to meet people where you're going to turn up and they're in a different state of mind, you know, so you have to be adaptable to deal with different characters, and you have to sometimes understand. I always used to think sometimes, like, especially with an artist who's on a tour and you know them and you turn up that one night and they're a little different, and instead of getting stroppy with them and like, what's your problem and things like that, sometimes it might be a comforting arm around them and saying, hey, okay, you know, so anything you want to talk about. That might be a person who's playing to like 50,000 people and being adored for 2 hours. And then he comes off stage and his wife's had a baby and he'd rather be at home having a pizza and watching a movie than being adored by a crowd, you know. So there's a certain element of compassion in as much as understanding that life on the road is not easy and it's relentless, and you have to go out and look like you're having the time of your life every day of your life. Whereas sometimes people go into work and they get away with being miserable. I don't think it gravitates you towards people and builds relationships, because I think people like to feel that they know someone and they don't want to just try and find out which of that person is turning up.
Well, I think that goes back to a thing we talked about earlier in relationships. When you're building a relationship with like your audience, your fans, if you care about delivering the best experience possible, but then you mentioned a point there when you have to support the performer, and really, again, it's about giving a shit about other people. Like, are you doing all right, man? You cared about the performer cares about the audience. So it's about this external caring. If you can dial that up, it's going to help you with relationships a lot.
I totally agree, but I also think that, you know, from the years that I've known you, you have a better background in understanding things like that than just Joe Schmo me. But I think the thing is, because I was surrounded by different characters at different stages in the career, I think I had to kind of draw that into like my ability to communicate with different people on different days in different situations. And I think the music industry is a great thing for that, because you can have chaos after chaos happening. You know, I mean, I'd had situations where you're doing a network TV and you turn up and the lead singer's overdosed the night before, you know, and it's like, whoa, and you've got to deal with the TV people, and don't worry, we'll sort it out, we'll get you somebody, you know. It's not a crisis, everything's like solvable, as long as you have it in your head that you can get it sorted out. And I'm not saying it's the best thing that can help shape you, but there are, you know, it's strength in adversity, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's resilience. I mean,
yeah, resilience, since we've often talked about those things. And I think more so than ever now, because, you know, we're in a post-pandemic phase now where it's changed a lot of people. So in a way, if I was working in the music industry as such today, and I'd had kind of a 2-year hiatus and come back, that person that I thought I might have known back then might be a different person now because of, I mean, I had this conversation with Peter Hook, who's was in Joy Division, New Order, and he's had his own band for the last 10, 12 years. And I said to him, how did you cope in the pandemic? Because, I mean, he wasn't used to being 24/7 with his wife, you know. And it was kind of like, and then all of a sudden he's in that situation where he can't do anything like everyone else. And to his credit, he said, we got on great, you know, and me and my wife got on great. And a lot of people were in that situation where, you know, one goes off to work, maybe the other one's at stay-at-home parent, maybe they both go off to work and they come back together in the evening. They don't have 24/7 together. And some, as we well know, just freaked out and lost the plot totally. That's not going to solve anything. It's like, hey, there's a pandemic. I can't do anything about with it. I have to deal with it.
Well, I think it's also this speaks to about what you choose to focus on. So you can choose to focus internally on how bad I feel, but again, like when you're building relationships and you care about others, if you externally focus on what you can do for others, get a puppy. I have to focus now on potty training my puppy and not about I'm locked in my house. I'm externally focusing. How can I help somebody? How can I make their life better? How get out of your head, because being in your head is sometimes not the best place to be. And people, I think, like David Bowie, you know, because he had a family history of some significant mental health. He's never became a member of the 27 Club like Cobain and Hendrix and Joplin. No, he didn't. So he probably had his own personal struggles, his own demons. He didn't even care for his own voice, right? But he navigated. And how did he do that? Probably by focusing on his creativity, by writing his songs, by performing. It's not, let me get stuck in my head about how bad I feel. Let me get concerned about something external that I love.
And it was, and the thing is, you're absolutely right. It was kind of like he knew where he wanted to go with his art, and he had it set in his mind. And I think we're both the same. I don't think we're just unique in that respect. I have no time for the people that are all about themselves. You know, I'm not talking about artists. I'm talking about people that is me, 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 me. I even had a friend back in the UK who was kind of like, not really successful, but if I was kind of talking about something, he always wanted to go one up on something. You know, if I'd seen somebody twice, he'd seen them 4 times. Or if I'd bought 2 records, he'd bought 5. And it was like, I just got bored out of my brains talking to him, you know, and I kind of phased him out thinking, this isn't inspirational conversation. I like to talk to people where, I love it where everyone benefits. You know, you come out of a conversation, the ones we've had over the years, you come out and I'll be sitting there in my private moments and something that you said would have triggered something off in my mind. So my best creative energy is often sparked off by some other situation. So I can bring out the best in me through conversation that I've had that's got nothing to do with what I'm thinking about 5 days later.
Like with that one individual you're talking about that was like all about me, 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 and trying to one up you on everything, is what's really sad about that is that he's a person that has what I call soul hole. His ego has been damaged so much so that he needs all of this validation.
Yeah.
And it's sad because something happened to make him like that. And yeah, he's not externally focused on what he can deliver to you to make you feel better. It's about, he's only concerned about his feelings.
But
right?
what they don't realize is they're not preaching to the converted as such. They're just exposing their insecurities. And as it's all going on, you almost want to say to them, you need to kind of go away and sort yourself out type thing, you know, because it's not, you're not getting anything out of it. And I find with people like that, there's a certain toxicity in as much as I'll find a way to be busy when they contact me and something, you know, because I don't really want to sit in that situation, because I don't want to spend any part of my life then, now, or later where I'm not around people I want to be around with. And I think the choices are down to you.
I think that speaks very well to the topic of relationships in general, because that's an example of fucking what not to do. Like, don't do that. If you do that, stop, right?
Yeah.
Learn a way to get more comfortable with yourself and at peace with yourself so that when you're around other people, you can deliver to them. And it's not a bad way to go about life.
Yeah, and I also think there's a lot to be said, you know, about yourself, because the thing is, you're not helping them by letting them get away with being that person. You know, you should be able to, if you feel that you know that person well enough, you should sit them down and say, listen, I'm going to tell you something you might not want to hear. And how they take it and how they listen. I would have no problem being called out for being wrong about something or whatever, you know, because I'll do my best not to do it again. And the person that might tell me that tells me because they care about me.
I think that's key. Is if you really give a shit about somebody, you want the best for them, so you will give them that feedback. The other challenge is how to do it in a nice way. Look,
Yeah.
like even like you say, I'm your A&R guy, so I help develop, like bring out the best in Tony. I'm not pushy for a reason. I do it. I make suggestions. I will plant seeds, and even I did this when I was an addictions counselor. Same thing, because one thing you have to know is that people never change through nagging. Nagging is a horrible way, bad criticism. So you have to find kind of a subtle way, and that's where communication comes in, and being a real human, thinking about it from the other person's perspective on what do I have to say? How do I have to say? Is it through a story? Is it catching the right timing to deliver this message? Because it is important. I do give a shit about you. Right? That's something people should know about you, that if you do it in that graceful kind of way, develop those communication skills, get in tune with yourself, get in tune with people and how they will receive it. Look at it through their eyes. How can you deliver that best? Because it can be done well and it can be done badly. Take the time to learn the skills to do it well.
Well, life's a continual learning curve, isn't it? I don't think you're ever there and you've ever got it. And I always admire people who have the guts to call me out on something if I was out of order, even little things like, and my wife's great at it, if she's talking about something and I'll interrupt, but I won't do it deliberately, but I'll get called out for it. She said, are you listening to what I'm saying? I got to finish my story. I'm sorry, it's like, and it kind of like, we're always in the business of learning. And I've always got excuses on the fact that, if I don't ball it out when it's in my head, I'll forget it.
Right. Well, you and our biggest challenge is we both have totally made out with the Blarney Stone. So talking over for us, even though I don't find it offensive because I can talk and listen at the same time, I don't think you're offended when I do it.
No, we do it. We give it back and forth, but when we're trying to present something to people and we're talking at the same time, we have to be professional in as much as like, well, if I'm talking and he's talking, what either of us is saying isn't sinking in because it's all going to be like gibberish.
Well, yeah, and the screen's going to bounce back and forth from me talking and you talking and me.
Yeah, bang, bang, bang. People are going, oh, I've got an headache, I'm going. It's like we could, what was the, could call it something like, oh, no, not them again.
Right. Well, and it's also
is like, obviously a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is, my years of working around, a lot of household names and things. But I do feel that if I walked out into that arena again and I was meeting, some of the most famous people around today, I still think I would have, those communication skills don't go away. I wouldn't walk into a dressing room and be fazed by Taylor Swift or somebody like that. I would want to interact with them and let her feel that once I left, she'd remember that she'd met me. So if you met her like, a year later at another gig, oh, I remember you were in such and such and type thing. So you can't consciously set out to make an impression unless you're the person you are, because it comes out naturally.
I like another saying to dial this in because I think people really receive it well. Be interested, don't be interesting.
Yeah.
More focused on being, because when somebody knows that you care and you leave that impression, they will remember you, because not many people in the world really give that much a shit in your own style, in your own way that's unique and different and all that stuff. Bring that out, of course, but have it authentic to who you are, but give a shit about other people. That will take you a long way. Most people just want to be, a lot of people like to be interesting.
But as my old school friend Socrates said, wisdom comes from questions, not from answers.
Socrates is a smart dude.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. If you're curious about people rather than just this endless barrage of who you are, and you want them to walk away like impressed, someone can walk away like bored or tired because all it's been is like, that me, just those short words that says everything. And we all know they exist in today's world, where people just don't give a shit about anybody other than themselves. And it's not anything to be proud of just because you might be able to kind of make money out of it. You won't have anybody to spend it with because nobody wants to be with you.
Right. That's a good point. I mean, money for me personally, and I've seen it with other people. It's like, yeah, money's a great goal, but it's better if you don't have the expectation. You put it on the back end and just focus on delivering. If you focus on delivering, if you do that often and long enough, and people resonate, which they will, if you are truly giving a shit about them and delivering whatever your product and service is, the money absolutely will come.
The money's compensation for time and talent.
It's a value exchange. It's like,
Yeah.
how much value am I giving to people receiving my product or service or thing, my band, whatever.
Well, I also feel that with what we're doing now, I mean, I always look forward to like the questions people have, because we could sit here and literally roll out reels and reels and reels of tape. Now, there's an old man term, tape. Remember that? Reels of tape. Never mind. But the thing is, it's not until like I say, in speaking gigs, I like it when the Q&A comes out, and because you get some interesting questions that you might think, oh, it's, you know, it's almost like being in I can only relate to things from being the artist, being in a band. So I'm on stage and I'm thinking I'm going to play what I consider the best songs, but it's not until you see the whites of people's eyes that you get an idea for what your set list is. Well, for me and speaking and stuff, and, you know, having been able to entertain an audience and share experiences and stories and things like that, you think you know what they want to hear, but it's not until they ask you afterwards that you really get an idea and think, oh, maybe that should be in the set. You know, it should be like the third track on the set list type thing or something.
Well, I think it goes back to giving a fuck. Well, two things. I think it goes back to really giving a shit about what you're delivering. Yeah. But so as a kind of an internal thing, like, why wouldn't you always want to try to get better? Like, do you want to just do like, oh, this is just good enough? I just want to do the good enough shit. No. I want to make, like, even when I was a counselor, I always wanted to get better. So getting feedback and seeing how people changed or didn't change, what stories worked, what stories didn't work. That was always wanting to get better. So you deliver more.
And that's another topic we can talk about later, but that kind of can, you know, that can lead to failure, but failure in the best possible way, because you gave it a go. It didn't work. It doesn't mean that you can't give the next thing a go. It's just that you might not slip up on the things you slipped up on last time.
I love the saying in NLP, and I don't want to get off on a tangent. That's called neuro-linguistic programming. It's a big fancy name for studying success. There's a statement in that field called "There's no such thing as failure, only feedback." That it's not failure, you got feedback, so you learn something, so you can do it better next time. So failure is actually needed.
To quote the man in the corner, Bob Dylan, if there's no such thing as failure, then failure is no success at all.
Mm-hmm.
That came from the 60s. I mean, you know, it's like those lines that guy writes really resonate.
Yeah. Well, hey, I think we hit this topic really well.
That was great. I enjoyed that. That was good. And I'm glad we didn't do it yesterday because I was totally knackered.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get another cup of coffee, and then I'll call you on the phone.
Okay, yeah, give us a ring on the phone because my battery's low on here.
Right on. Cool.
Go away.
Cheers.